Time must fly when you're having fun, because believe it or not, it's already time for a fresh edition of This Week in Cleantech, your favorite 15-minute-ish roundup of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy this week. Today is Friday, March 6th, 2026, and we've got a returning guest waiting in the lobby. Evan Halper from the Washington Post will be joining us shortly. Always good to get a familiar face back on the program. If you don't know mine by now, I'm Factor This content director Paul Gerke, joined as always by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. Mike, how are you, brother?
I'm good. Well, I wanted to say it is cool that last week we had Beth Weiss on. She was guest number 5. Evan Halper, I think he's been on, I think, at least twice. And so he's like a third-time returning guest or fourth, so that's really cool.
Yeah, fool us thrice, shame on me, I think is how that goes.
But I do, on a personal note, I do want to say we have audience that spans the globe. But as an American, I want to say I'm saddened by the outbreak of violence in the Middle East. This is not the time and this is not the show for me to pontificate on a topic I have really no expertise on, but I do mourn the 6 American war dead as well as the innocent lives that have been lost so far, and I hope this conflict ends quickly.
Yeah, well said, brother. And if you're finding a way to listen to this show from that part of the world, our appreciation knows no bounds. You're really incredible. And if you can't listen to the show, but you usually do, I hope you're keeping your friends and family close and staying safe out there. And like you said, Mike, hopefully this is done as soon as possible. If you do want something to share, if you do have something to share with us or want to see a story on the show, we've got a means to do that. It's an email address, twic@tigercomm.us. That's TWIC@tigercomm with 2 M's.us. If you got 2 cents to spare, we'll put it in our piggy bank. We always love to hear from the viewers and the listeners of the show. We've got 5 stories to get to this week, as we always do. Let's start with number 1. Mike, what are we reading about?
It is by David Wallace-Wells of the New York Times. Don't look now, but the green transition is still happening. Hey, DWW, it's me, Mike. Hey, do you mind if I call you that? Yeah, listen, we want you on the show. You cannot do all this great analysis and not come on here and share it with our audience, Paul Gerke. I'm doing a shout out.
Come on, D Double Dub, let's go. Get on the show, man. We're begging for it. Yeah. So if you haven't read this one yet, despite the political backlash that's ongoing and this climate emergency that we find ourselves in, Cleantech is taking off all over the world, which is good business for us, brother. Some examples: only 7 gas-powered cars, 7. Count them on your fingers, were sold in Norway in January. That's it. 92% of U.S. utility-scale electricity capacity planned for this year is clean, and some regions in Pakistan are soon going to see more power come from rooftop solar than other parts of the grid during some times in the day. And we know Texas keeps setting solar generation records here in the U.S. According to the IEA, between 2025 and 2030, more than 90% of all the new electricity capacity worldwide is expected to be renewable. The transition increasingly driven by economics rather than the politics or the tree hugging and wanting to go green that you might associate the ideas with. Cheap solar, falling battery costs, energy security concerns, or directly linking back to the situation in Iran right now. Volatile fossil fuel prices pushing countries more toward renewables, even as the policy momentum slows. We said it, last year, Mike. I think that the tech can survive without the subsidies, and we are seeing it in practice right now. Your thoughts on this piece?
My thought is at least our tech can. I don't know if the incumbents' tech can, but hey.
They got that lobbying money to bolster them, though. They'll be okay. Don't lose sleep over the oil boys.
All right, first, everyone should read Jack Ewing's piece in the New York Times. I put it up on LinkedIn, but it's called U.S. Automakers Risk Being Reduced to Niche Producers of Gas Vehicles. It poses this simple question: why are so many people in leadership positions in this country volunteering for us to get Kodak? If you're too young to know what Kodak is, look it up in Wikipedia.
School the kids about photography, Mike.
Anyway, yeah. Okay, so because the ideology over reality crowd is governing to take us back to the 1970s, clean energy growth is moving toward emerging economies. Barely half of sub-Saharan Africa has access to electricity today, but it's now becoming a region with significant solar growth. The big polluters like India and China are showing signs of structural change away from fossil fuels and toward more renewables. The transition still isn't happening fast enough, but let's be clear that renewables are supplementing rather than displacing fossil fuels. So global carbon pollution is still rising, although more slowly. Paul, story number 2, friend.
Our second story is by our friend Justine Kalma from The Verge, titled "What Trump's War on Iran Means for the U.S. Energy Crunch." Penny, for your thoughts, Mr. Casey.
Yeah, Ms. Kalma, she is a show alum. But after bombing Iran, U.S. gas prices have already gone up 10 cents. Liquid natural gas prices surged 45% in Asia, 30% in Europe. It's raised questions about what a prolonged conflict would do to energy costs, power grids, and what companies are going to do to respond. So the Straits of Hormuz, which carries about 1/5 of global petroleum and liquid natural gas, has become the key choke point, with shipping disrupted as the Iranian Revolutionary Guard threatened to fire on ships and shipping insurers changed or canceled policies. So higher crude oil prices could encourage more U.S. drilling, aligning with Trump's drill baby drill agenda, but it could also mean higher gasoline prices in the short term for consumers. Paul.
The math is pretty simple here, Mike. The longer this conflict goes on, the more damaging it will be to the market and the more expensive it's going to be to buy gas pretty much anywhere in the world. Analysts say the market would tighten up and trigger after 4 to 5 weeks of conflict or so, and trigger more serious discussions about ramping up production here in the United States, but also tapping into global reserves elsewhere in the world. Natural gas and electricity prices also expected to go up if the U.S. exports more LNG to compensate for disruption to Middle Eastern supply, and it sounds like initial reports out of that region very much indicative of that LNG moving around is going to be a serious problem, at least in the short term. A similar pattern happened after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It drove up global energy prices, as you might remember, and really increased U.S. LNG exports to Europe, switching sources to U.S. here. Some analysts argue that expanding renewables and nuclear power would improve long-term energy security and price stability, but I think building toward the future is not exactly what's happening right now, and we're going to have to deal with the present, and it might be a bumpy ride. Mike, story number 3.
Bianca Giacobone from Latitude Media. What AES's $33.4 billion take private says about energy and AI, Paul.
So last week, AES announced a 20-year deal with Google to power an 850 megawatt data center in Texas with co-located renewables. And then on Monday, AES confirmed some news that had been percolating for a while about how it's going to be acquired by a consortium led by BlackRock's Global Infrastructure Partners and EQT. The enterprise value of that deal, north of $33 billion, one of the largest ever take-private deals in the utility sector. AES said it needs significant funding to support growth beyond 2027, and without that transaction, AES warned it might need to cut dividends, or issue large amounts of new equity to finance its pipeline of projects, including nearly 12 gigawatts of contracted capacity with hyperscale clients alone. Mike, your thoughts?
So AI and data center load growth is driving investment in M&A across the power sector. There were roughly $142 billion with a B in U.S. power and utility deals across 157 transactions in 2025. That's more than the combined total for 2022, 2023, and 2024.
Wow.
Private capital is increasingly targeting utilities because they offer predictable, contracted returns. But obviously, AES stands out because it's both a regulated utility and a major power producer, so buyers get regulated rate-based cash flows, plus the upside from the fast-growing bring-your-own generation market, where hyperscalers contract directly for dedicated power to bypass interconnection delays. Paul, fourth story.
Story number 4 by Suvrat Kotari from Inside EVs, titled "Europe is Learning an Uncomfortable Truth About Local Battery Production." School us, Mike.
Yeah, Europe wants to localize EV battery production, but Chinese battery makers, they offer way cheaper products, and Europe's supply chain is far less mature, leading to major project cancellations even as EV sales are rapidly growing. So, for example, Porsche scaled back its self-force battery manufacturing to focus on R&D because production wasn't, quote, economically viable. Northvolt, once seen as Europe's battery champion, filed for bankruptcy in 2024 after losses and production issues. I think what this really is a testament to is if you invest for the long term, you play well in the long term. That's exactly what China has done, and it's exactly the opposite of what's being done here in the States, Paul.
Well, you said something about being far less mature. Speaking of which, Brian, can you clip him saying but? And we'll just use that again at some point, completely out of context. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Anyway, back to the story. So China leads most of the global battery supply chain, as you might know, everything from minerals all the way up to production. It's especially dominant in the world's cheapest battery chemistry, and the country's scale and overcapacity means they can sell them for pennies on the dollar. Even when Europe manufactures locally, it still relies heavily on Chinese equipment and materials, and the same goes for battery manufacturers here in the States. They still got to find a way to get the raw components. Most of them come through China. Policymakers are trying to respond to this. Last year, the EU created a battery booster with about 2 billion euros in interest-free loans to support local cell production. But it's a game where they're playing catch-up, Mike. They're pursuing local sourcing requirements for critical minerals. Similar to the U.S. IRA, it's going to take time, and we need the stuff now. Speaking of the right now, let's get our guest in here, Mike, our last story of the day.
Evan Halper from the Washington Post, he comes back to this show with his story, Why Katie Miller and Other MAGA Influencers Suddenly Love Solar Power. Evan, welcome back. This seems like a very cool story, and I'd like you to tell our audience, what's the bottom line takeaway?
Yeah, so the bottom line takeaway here, and also I should say I am old enough to remember Kodak. So.
Shaking like a Polaroid picture, baby.
Yes. The bottom line takeaway here is that after, tearing into solar for the last year, this administration has been, doing everything it could to slow down solar and sort of give fossil fuels a leg up. They're realizing, there's not enough energy out there. You need solar power. Solar power combined with batteries, is going to account for something close to 80% of the new energy that comes onto the grid this year. They want to do this AI build out, and obviously they're realizing that like inhibiting solar projects, trying to kill solar projects that are almost built, doesn't get them where they need to get with the energy agenda that the president is pushing. And so now you're starting to see these MAGA influencers. I mean, Katie Miller is the most interesting one because she sort of came out of nowhere. Pollsters, Kellyanne Conway, Tony Fabrizio, Newt Gingrich is writing about this also, are all sort of saying, why are we not doing more with solar? And of course, the big cheerleader for this is Elon Musk, who's a big MAGA guy, not as affiliated with the rest of the solar industry as these others, as people like you guys. But, Elon Musk wants to build, 100 gigawatts of solar capacity in the US. This is his big vision for, powering data centers. And so it's kind of a safe space for Republicans to get on board. I should be clear that these influencers are getting, we don't know about Katie Miller, but everyone in the industry assumes she's getting paid. She wouldn't comment on that when I reached her. The industry's finally figuring this out and getting crafty about who they should align with. Obviously the pollsters are getting paid. I don't know about Newt Gingrich, didn't return my phone calls. But I would also say, even though the industry's been clever in getting these people involved, these are people who would not step out of line with, the MAGA party line, unless they felt comfortable doing so. And you're starting to see a shift from the administration toward embracing solar, as these clever influencers. Some of them are collecting a nice payday aligning with the industry.
You're telling me that someone's getting paid to talk about solar? Mike, that's news to us, man. We ought to get on that gravy train. Where the hell are our checks?
I'm a volunteer, man. That sucks.
Jeez. Hey, listen, Evan, I know Mike's got a lot to say on this, so I just got one question for you, because when I saw this, this is immediately where my head went. This felt inevitable to me. We were starting to see it in press releases where we're talking about capacity or power deals where it's like 16 gigawatts or whatever, and then you see the things listed off by the feds, and it's like, 5 gigawatts of geothermal and 3 gigawatts of nuclear and such battery storage, and you're left with a gap in the math where you're like, well, what's that going to be? What's that 5 gigawatts supposed to be? Because everything else has already been named. It's going to be solar, isn't it? And it almost felt, Evan, like there was this sort of acceptance by attrition going on for this past few weeks, maybe past couple months, where it's like we're admitting that solar is an integral part of this equation, even though we had Chris Wrong, as Mike likes to call him, up there screaming in front of all his constituents that we're going to do it with coal and we're going to do it with gas, and solar and green energy can go screw. But here we are in a position where they've already kind of been like, yeah, actually, this is the way it's going to be. Is that the way it felt to you in your reporting? Has this been a long time coming and now finally we're just speaking the words, or is this just an actual point where we've reached in this analysis where it's like, well, we're going to have to do it with solar?
I mean, I think everyone saw this coming except for maybe the president who just thinks solar is ugly and he couldn't wrap his head around the idea that like, no, this is actually providing a lot of energy. I mean, these guys like in the White House, they have this thing about baseload power that runs 24/7 and they just did not understand, that these solar panels, you pair them with battery storage, like what everyone who, listens to your program knows, and you actually do have pretty steady power. So, yeah, I mean, you could also see it coming, how many stories did the Washington Post and all of our competitors do on these solar projects get canceled in the States, and it just drives people nuts, in deep red states, in Texas and Nevada, in purple states. And there was so much pushback, from governors, from state lawmakers, from businesses, from Trump donors that, look, we need this power. What are you doing? We understand you think these panels are ugly or you think these wind turbines are ugly, but like, this is not really about aesthetics right now. We need the power. You want us to build these data centers. We can't do it. We can't wait 7 years for the, gas turbines to come in. And so, yeah, all the data points in the direction they would get here. It took them a while. They held out, for longer than I would have expected. But they're starting to ease up, let the permits go out. The thing that surprised me the most while I was reporting the story, I missed a post on, Truth Social that Trump had done, that Trump had promoted himself. It came from the All In podcast, David Sachs and those guys. But what Trump was promoting on this podcast, or when he retweeted it, was like, they were talking about actually having tech companies take out a tax equity bond and pay and paying for rooftop solar on millions and millions of homes, so that like these homes would get free energy, and then the tech companies would free up all that energy for the grid. And it was just kind of interesting to see like Trump was actually retweeting that. I mean, as someone at the Solar Energy Industries Association told me, like, that would not have happened last year.
Wow. Evan, besides economics and a shift in strategy on the part of some, anything else that's changed that led to this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's data centers. They're sort of dealing with like the reality that they can't get their power, and there's affordability. I mean, I guess that's economics also, but like, and there's politics, so, I don't know if that's what you're alluding to, Mike, but like we've seen 2 elections where affordability of electricity played really big, in Virginia and in New Jersey. And, what we also saw there was the Republicans just got walloped. And, the Democrats were talking about this and they were pushing clean energy forward. The Republicans were not. And, what we're seeing here now is that, like, when it comes to affordability and people getting freaked out about their electricity costs, there's a political price to pay. And now the midterms are coming up and, we saw the AI to tech companies were at the White House this week, talking about affordability, and, Trump is with them. There's real politics that come into play here, and this is going to be an issue in midterms. And, the White House is realizing, like, things that they do, to energy subtraction is not going to be the answer for them.
I'll note 2 numbers, and then we probably got to go to our Cleantecher of the week. Americans' utility bills went up 6.7% in December alone. And in 2025, we canceled 1,891 solar and wind farms. Those are not accidentally together. They are causally related. And we need to go to our Cleantecher of the week. But Paul Gerke, I feel it really important for every Cleantecher that's got to get on a plane. I want to note a runner-up Cleantecher of the week.
Let's do it. Second place, silver medal.
United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby is the first CEO to ban, on pain of removal from the flight, you don't get to be a noise-polluting zombie and blast your speakerphone from your cell phone on flights. And for that, I got to give him Cleantech of the Week runner-up. All right, Paul, give him the official.
He didn't make the world any cleaner as the CEO of an airline,
he made it
but he made it slightly quieter for you, Mike Casey, and that is all you need to get love on this show. Our actual Cleantecher of the Week, David Jankowsky, CEO of Francis Energy. If you don't know Francis Energy, they provide ultra-fast charging stations for EVs, and they're focusing on expanding access to some underserved and rural communities to ensure that no community is left behind in our transition to electric vehicles. Congrats, David, our Cleantecher of the Week. David, you didn't make the world any quieter, but you're making it a better place, and that's what we appreciate.
Hey, we want to thank Evan Halper for joining us. Brian Mendez, a wonderful producer. He's wonderful most of the time. And then Claire Quirin and Alex Peterson for gathering these stories, Paul.
If you guys enjoyed the show, subscribe, leave a little feedback, share a story suggestion to the email address I mentioned at the top of the show. If you want to read the articles we talk about each week, you can find them. They're in the episode description, presented as links. They're also linked to the post on factorthis.com if you get the show there. We'll catch you next time. Be good, people.
See ya.